morning, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about quotation, paraphrase, and summary. We really want to start focusing on using more than just our quotations to support our points in our papers. All right, let's get started. Facts and statistics. Well, those are really easy ways to support the points and arguments you make in an essay. And if you can find facts and statistics, that's great. But typically, we have to deal with quotations from books and other things that aren't as easy to use as facts and statistics. Now, does it really matter how you use quotes? It absolutely does. You see, you only use quotes when the original idea that you're going to cite is forceful or colorful. Something that everybody would say is not something you want to quote. You want to quote things that are unusual, things that really help support your point. But again, not something that everybody else would say. In addition, you really want to use a quote if you are making a statement and you think the reader is going to say, I don't know if that's true. Then that's definitely a time then you want to use a quote. Now, does it matter how you use paraphrasing? It absolutely does as well. Paraphrasing is used when you have a statement or a couple of lines when the original is just either too difficult or too tedious to understand. Maybe the reader doesn't want to listen to the author go on and on and on. So you can paraphrase something. Maybe it has a lot of technical language or other information that just make it kind of difficult and frustrating for someone to understand. That's when you would want to paraphrase. Now, does it matter how you use a summary? Again, absolutely. Summaries are really designed for those times when you have an original idea that's just really too long. Maybe you want to summarize an entire article that you read, or an entire chapter, or an entire section of a chapter. Well, your reader is not going to want to read an entire chapter or a big piece of a chapter or even a couple pages. So this is the time when you would want to summarize. Now, whether you summarize, use quotations, or paraphrase, all three forms require proper documentation. Otherwise, you're going to end up plagiarizing. So let's go on and look at some of the rules for how we use these different types of support in our papers. Okay, here are some tips for using quotations. Now, so many times I see students write their entire point, then a whole point of a citation. Their entire point, then a whole line for a citation. It's that old commentary, concrete detail, commentary, concrete detail. But as you begin to get older, rarely do you need to use an entire sentence. You can actually blend your sentence and a quote together. Just remember, don't change the context of what was being said. Now, in addition to using a quote, you can also try using an indirect quotation. Let me show you an example of that. In this sentence, we're quoting the author, but not directly. Look how it's done. In Clutter, William Zinsser advises us to re-examine every sentence we write. This is an example of an indirect quotation. Now, there are some rules for quotations. Let's take a look at those. The first rule for quotations is this. If you're going to have a quotation that's over 4 lines, that's 4 lines of text in a paragraph, you need to set it off as a separate block quotation. This is standard MLA formatting, and you can look that up. In a 2-page essay, you probably wouldn't need to use a block quotation. Might look a little weird in just, 2.5 pages. But as you write longer essays and you get to where you're writing, 7, 8, 9, 10-page essays, block quotations can be very helpful. Now, The next rule, quotes must always reproduce the original exactly. You cannot alter it, you cannot change it, and that includes punctuation and spelling. If the person you're citing has a spelling error, you have to leave it in there. And remember, you're using quotations to help reinforce your credibility. So be very careful if you're going to choose a quote that doesn't have correct punctuation and spelling, unless it helps to prove your point. So the next rule is that you may add an explanation or comment to a quote. Let's look at an example now. Zinsner writes that before John Dean gave us "at this point in time," people had stopped saying "now." You'll see there that some people might not know who John Dean was, so you can use brackets to write in something, like in this case in a positive, something at the statement that will explain who John Dean is, a special advisor to the president. Okay, so you can add an explanation or comment if you think it's really needed in the quote that you're using, but it has to be in brackets so that the audience knows that it's your words, not the author's. One of the questions that teachers hate more than anything is, how many quotes should I use in each paragraph? Well, that's because it really depends on the point that you're going to try to make. If you're trying to make a point that's really going to kind of go along with what the thinking of the audience already is, or, general common thought, you're not going to need very much support for that, because the audience and readers, they're kind of already on your side. But if you're going to try to change your audience's mind about a topic or prove a controversial point, well, then you're going to need lots more support, and you're going to need really credible support. Okay, let's talk about using paraphrases. The only purpose for paraphrasing is simplification. If you want to simplify something your author said to make it easier for your audience to understand. Now, there's really no formal conventions for paraphrasing. There's no set, you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. As long as you are citing the work you are paraphrasing, you're going to be in good shape. So, here's some rules. Number 1, you must keep the original point of view intact. You cannot paraphrase and change the author's intent of what they were originally saying. You have to keep the original point of view. Paraphrasing must be in your own words. You cannot use any of the words the author used if you're going to be paraphrasing. If you're going to use the author's original words, then quote them. Finally, you must include every thought of the work. If an author's trying to make a point and they're saying, I believe in A and I believe in B, and the two go together, you can't just quote the author saying, I believe in A. So you have to make sure that you're including every thought of the work, and you can't just pick and choose what you're deciding to paraphrase. Now, here's some quick tips for using summaries. Summaries are similar to paraphrases, but the purpose of a summary is to take a large piece of text and turn it into a short, readable statement. You would never want to summarize 3 sentences in a 3-sentence summary. That doesn't make sense. The whole point of summaries is to take larger material and turn it into something smaller and more attainable by your audience. Here's a few rules you need to follow for summaries. Number 1, a summary can't be more than 1/4 of the original length. So if you're going to summarize a paragraph that's 4 sentences, your summary can't be more than 1 sentence. So you cannot have a 2-sentence summary of a 4-sentence paragraph. Okay? The next rule, you must include the author's main points. That's really important. Again, we can't just pick and choose what we like from the author. You've got to include the main points, so then you never change the context. Okay? You must omit extraneous comments. The summary has to be exactly that. Your words summarizing an author's opinions, not your opinion of an author's statement. That gets into analysis. When you summarize, you have to be objective and just summarize what the author said. And then finally, you have to be faithful to the author's emphasis and interpretation. Okay? You can't change what the author was saying and twist their words around in a summary. That's just not right. That's just not right. One of the most important things you can remember is you avoid plagiarism by using your own words. Do not rely heavily on using phrases that the author used or copying their sentence structure exactly, because if you do that, you should use a quote. Otherwise, if you don't quote them and it is a summary, then you could be accused of plagiarizing if you've chosen to repeat some of the same words the author is already using. Okay, so let's wrap this up real quick. Final tips. Number 1, don't just slap a quote into your essay because I told you you have to use support. Okay? You really need to be thinking about what it is you're trying to say and what you need in order to make yourself sound credible. If you're going to make a point, what kind of support do you need to make the audience? If you're going to make a point, then what kind of support do you need for the reader to find that point credible? Number 2, think about what works best for the support you need to use. Should you summarize? Should you use a paraphrase? Should you use a quotation? What's the best way to do it? And lastly, remember, how much support you use really depends on the point or argument you're going to try to make. Think about the rules and then make sure you follow them. Have a great day.